I'm Dee White, and I'd like to thank you for coming to the launch of my new book, Beyond Belief. It's always so fantastic to hold a new book in your hands, and I love that new book smell.
Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the Dja Dja Wurrung people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I work and live, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. I pay respect to elders past, present and emerging.
As part of my launch, I wanted to pay tribute to all the other authors and artists who are doing it tough during this difficult time. So what I've tried to do is incorporate as many other authors and give them a chance to showcase their work during my launch. And I'm going to be talking later to historical fiction author Kathryn Gauci about her work and about how we both incorporate World War II research into our historical fiction.
Stay tuned because there are 2 chances to win a copy of Beyond Belief. One is over at Cheryl Gwither's fabulous blog, where I'll be chatting with Cheryl about writing historical fiction for children. Thanks so much for having me, Cheryl. Your other opportunity to win a copy is by commenting at my live feed on my YouTube channel or on this Facebook post. Ask a question or tell me why you'd like to win. The fact that I'm now holding this book in my hand is thanks to my fabulous publisher, Claire Halifax, and my wonderful editor, Kirsty Bushnell. Thank you so much, Claire and Kirsty. You know how much this book means to me. I'm also very excited because Claire has actually dropped in today and left a little message about the book.
Hello, I'm Claire Halifax, publisher of omnibus books at Scholastic and very proud publisher of Beyond Belief by the marvellous Dee White. I've been lucky enough to publish several books by Dee, but this story, when we began chatting about it a few years ago, I knew immediately to be something special. The story of Jewish children helped by Muslims to escape the Nazis in World War II is powerful and poignant. Sharing the journey to publication with Dee has been a privilege. It seems profound to me that Beyond Belief launches at a time when we too are in hiding, at a time we need protection from an enemy. It's not the same, of course, but it does heighten our sense of sympathy and understanding for the plight of Reuben, and our understanding of the dangers that Reuben and his family find themselves facing gives us perspective. Congratulations, Dee, on the launch of Beyond Belief, and much love.
I really love what the designer has done with the cover for Beyond Belief because it incorporates so many important elements of the story. In the corner here we have Reuben, who's the main character. There's the Star of David, and that represents his Jewish faith. The shape here is the mosque window, and these mosaics are found in Reuben's favourite emerald garden at the mosque. We also have the cedar tree. When Mama drops Reuben at the mosque, she says to him, "Reuben, you must be strong. You must stand up for what you believe in." And there's also this cute little pigeon here, which also represents Reuben. His sister Rosa has always called him Little Pigeon because she says he can always find his way home. At the mosque, Reuben is taken in by the Imam and his family, and he has to learn how to be a Muslim. He's given a new name, Abdul, and if his true identity is discovered, he'll be killed, and so will the people trying to save him. Reuben starts to settle in at the mosque and he makes friends, but he misses his family dreadfully. And nowhere in Paris is safe for Jews. The mosque is raided constantly by Nazi soldiers. And during one of those raids, Reuben is forced to flee through the sewers of Paris for his life. Now Reuben faces a whole new set of challenges if he's going to make it to Spain and be reunited with his family. Reuben's story is set in Paris in 1942. And in July 1942, on the 16th and 17th of July, more than 13,000 Jews were arrested in Paris by the French police. Now, many of the French police were not happy about doing this job, but they were blackmailed, their families were threatened, and they were forced into it. Some of them went very early on the morning of the raids to warn the Jewish people that this mass arrest was going to happen. But unfortunately, many people didn't listen to them because they didn't believe that every Jew in Paris would be arrested. And they said, where will they keep us all? How will they feed us? They had no idea of what the Nazis had planned for them. These 13,000 men, women and children were taken to the Velodrome in Paris. It was the middle of summer, it was hot, there was hardly any food or water, and from there they were transported to the concentration camps where most of them were killed. The Algerian Muslims of Paris were horrified at what had happened to the Jewish people. Never before had women and children been arrested. Charity and giving is one of the 5 pillars of their religion. So what they did was they distributed leaflets to the workers, the Algerian workers in Paris, asking them to help the Jews. And this is what it said. Yesterday at dawn, the Jews of Paris were arrested. The elderly, both women and children, exiles like ourselves, workers like us. They are our brothers, and their children are our children. The one who encounters one of his children must give shelter and protection to that child for as long as misfortune or sorrow lasts. O man of my country, your heart is generous. And apart from being very kind people, this is one of the things that motivated the Muslims to help people like Reuben during World War II. When I'm writing, I always have a writer's notebook, and I have a separate one for each manuscript. I have pictures of my characters and how I imagine them in my head. It really helps me to describe them in the story and to feel as if they're real people to me. So now I'm going to be talking to historical fiction author Kathryn Gauci about writing and researching World War II events. And after that, I'm going to be talking about my personal connection to my story. I'm having a virtual cup of tea with historical fiction author Kathryn Gauci. We'll be talking about World War II research and how we incorporate it in our writing. She and I connected immediately because we have a common interest in World War II history and incorporating it into works of fiction. And Kathryn, like me, you're an avid researcher, aren't you?
Yes, that's right. Hi, by the way, Dee. Good to connect with you. And we're having that virtual cup of tea, as you say.
So Kathryn's World War II books include The Poseidon Adventure and Code Name Camille, Conspiracy of Lies, which, like my new book, Beyond Belief, is set in World War II Paris. So Kathryn, I'd love you to tell us about Conspiracy of Lies and maybe a bit about the research.
Thank you. Like you, I was drawn to France for quite a few years, really. And I'd been visiting the areas of Normandy a few times and Brittany. And I don't know, I was just drawn to that part of the world because of the battles and what went on there. So that was the start. Actually being in the area. But the other thing that I wanted to bring out when I started Conspiracy of Lies was it's about a woman who falls in love with a German. And I had a thing about these women that were falling for the enemy, and and what happened to them after the war, how many could not say anything or they were killed often. But I thought quite often there would be a genuine love affair. But so that was the basis that she fell for a German at the wrong time. But at the same time, she also is called to be a secret agent, and she's torn between two worlds. And
so she joins the resistance, does she?
No, she flees France.
Yeah.
And she goes to London, and she's recruited by the Special Operations Executive, and she arrives back into France and work in Brittany as an undercover agent with the resistance.
Oh, okay. So that's where I guess there's a connection with my story too,
Yes,
because
that's right.
one of my main characters is actually based on a historical character that was in the resistance.
And like you as well, I do have quite a strong setting in Paris. Yes, I think that's what one reason that drew me to your book as well. The fact that you had done your research in Paris,
It's
and
such an amazing place to be, isn't it?
it is, and it was one of the worst places to be for the collaborators of all France. It was just terrible there.
Yeah.
So
Yes, I love the finding out all about the historical aspects of France and of Paris itself. And I went through the sewers and I went into the mosque and I went into the synagogue, and there were just, all sorts of just amazing places. And Paris is just such a city alive with history, isn't it?
and it was interesting to see how Paris was during the Phony War, which is part of the starting point of Conspiracy of Lies. And so I was attracted to your book because we were in the same area and we were talking about the resistance. And I was interested to see how you did your work as well, because in other books have brought in the Muslims again and the Jews working together. And you've done the same, as I haven't done it, but I've seen you've done the same. So
Yeah.
I was interested to know how you researched that and how it came about.
Yeah, well, that was something. I was actually researching another book in Paris, and then I came across this story of Muslims at a mosque in Paris who had saved Jewish children during World War II. And so I actually applied for a grant through Creative Victoria, through Vic Arts, their Vic Arts funding program. And they gave me a grant to go to Paris to spend a month researching, which was just amazing. And so I was able to go to the actual mosque. I actually had a few difficulties with that because I don't speak Arabic or French. But I organised to do a tour through the Paris sewers, which is where my character escaped. And I think one of your characters escapes through the sewers, don't they, if I remember rightly?
In Code Name Camille.
Yeah.
She uses the escape routes through the sewers and down the Seine on the coal barges to take mainly the Jews that they were helping. So we do have a similarity there in what we've been interested in.
Yeah, so it was so amazing to to see those sewers and to smell them and to think that that's how people escaped. And when I was doing the sewer tour, they gave me an interpreter, which was fantastic. And she actually happened to speak Arabic, and she was a Muslim, and she took me back to the mosque and helped me find the information that I needed.
So you were lucky there.
I was very lucky.
And where was the mosque?
It was the Grand Mosque of Paris. So it was across the road from the the big gardens with the zoo in it.
And did you find that there were many Jews being hidden by Muslims?
It was hard to get an actual number, but my research suggests there was probably about 1,000 that went through the mosque. But from what I can gather, they helped them get false identities and false papers so they could find their way out of Paris. So as far as the children, what they tended to do was pretend that they were children of the people living at the mosque.
Yeah, which would have been very difficult for them.
Yeah. And so that's basically what my character Reuben is. He arrives at the mosque, he's 11, and his parents have left him there because they've gone to find his sister Rosa, and they're hoping to flee to Spain, which is a lot safer at that time. And so he actually is left at the mosque, and he's taken on by the imam as part of his family. And so he has to pass himself off as a Muslim. And basically they have raids at the mosque, which they did during the war.
Yeah.
And if he's discovered that he's Jewish, then he'll be killed, and so will the people that are helping him.
And the collaborators would have been working inside there as well.
Absolutely.
But that's one thing I found about doing research in my various books is that war brings out the best and the worst in us. And we often think of many religions as keeping to themselves, the people keeping to themselves. But there's so many stories of heroism and people helping the others. I mean, not all Germans were against the Jews. And there are many Germans and Austrians that the Jews consider the righteous amongst nations.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of coming together. And with my books that I set in Greece and Turkey, although the Greeks and Turks had fought each other during World War II, the Turks definitely helped the Greeks, and particularly the Greek Jews. So
yeah, and it's so relevant now to today even, isn't it? Because, I mean, even in our current situation, we're really seeing the best and the worst of people, aren't we?
Yes,
we're seeing how people are really helping in their communities and other people, are really looking after themselves and nobody else. So it's really interesting to be able to draw those parallels. And I feel like even as far as fake news and propaganda, like during the war, there was so much propaganda, particularly in France, against the Jews. I mean, they even made fake movies and things to make the Jews look worse. And yet, we have that kind of thing today where it's really hard to work out what is actually real and what's fake.
I know. And another thing, when you're coming to do the research about World War II, you have to read, not only be there, I think, but you have to read so many different books from different viewpoints to get the balance of things.
Yeah, you do. And, there's so many museums in Paris, isn't there? And so many historic monuments and places to go and people to talk to. And I was actually really lucky here in Australia because the Holocaust Centre in Melbourne, they had some Holocaust survivors from Paris, and I was able to speak directly with them. And they actually read my manuscript for cultural sensitivity issues to make sure, and also for historical verification, to make sure that the things that I had in my book were authentic.
And so, well, that's good. If you got them behind you.
Yeah, it was great. They were really helpful, and their librarian there was helpful too. And that was another thing I found, that you can set a story in a place that there can be information that's available in so many other places around the world that can contribute to your story. You can somehow find the people that you need that can verify the things you need to be verified.
The amount of collaborators that were about the Franche-Comté Jura region could not have worked so well for the Germans if they had not have had so many collaborators.
Yes, and during the Veldiv roundup in July 1942, the French police were the ones that were going and arresting the Jews.
Yeah,
and they arrested something like 11,000 Jews within a few days.
Yeah. Well, unlike Greece with the Jews, because Greece definitely did not want to go with the pogroms against the Jews, and they made that clear to the Germans in the beginning. But even they couldn't do anything in the end, and the Jews felt quite safe until the last minute. Whereas I think right from the beginning in Vichy France, the Jews did not feel safe.
No. And that was because that had been a propaganda campaign that had been going, for years, really, for a couple of years before the Veldiv roundup.
Yeah. But we also have to remember that there was this anti-Jewish feeling in the whole of Europe at the time. So it was easy to hone in on people who believed in all this.
Absolutely. And I mean, my own family, my grandfather ended up in Dachau, and he was married in a synagogue, but he wasn't a practicing Jew, and he was arrested and put in Dachau as a preventative prisoner. So it was basically assumed that because he was Jewish, he would be about to commit a crime, and so they imprisoned him just in case. And so I actually have letters that he wrote to my father and to my father's mother from Dachau, and he was one of the lucky ones that got out in 1938.
He was very lucky. And what happened when he got out? Did he leave Austria?
Well, they ended up, that's what happened. They left Austria after Kristallnacht and came to Australia. So some of those letters that he wrote in Dachau, which I'm going to be reading later on in my launch, some of those letters actually show a lot of hidden information about what their plans really were.
The plans of the Germans, you mean?
No, the plans for my father's and his family's plans to flee Austria.
Well, they were the lucky ones.
They were.
Because, as you said, he wasn't really a practicing Jew.
No.
A lot of Viennese Jews had classed themselves more first and foremost as Viennese, and had been not non-practicing for a while, and that they thought that would save them. So
Yeah.
he was good. It was good for him that he recognised that in the end he wouldn't be saved either.
No. And there were some other members of the family that were able to flee, but unfortunately some of them didn't make it out. And they were some of the ones from Austria and also from Hungary.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why, I think writing books about World War II and that time in our history is so important, because these are lessons we can learn.
You don't know the truth of what's happening when you're in it.
No, that's true. But I think we're a little more savvy, and especially with things like social media, there's just more information out there that can be verified. I think we really need to open our eyes to all the information that's out there, and it's something that we need to do when we're researching as well for our books.
Yeah, we do. But where I am, when I've written my Greek and Turkish books, the same thing that happened there is happening in Syria and the Middle East.
Yeah.
So it's nothing different there. And also the divisiveness that's happened in the last few years is the same divisiveness that was happening before World War One and World War Two.
That's true. Yeah.
So we just have to be. I always hope when I write something that I'm giving a warning, and people. I like primarily to tell a story. I'm telling a story when I write. But I want it to be something that people will really think about. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same with what you've just.
Yeah, I do, and you see that, like, my book hasn't been published. I mean, obviously it's about to be launched. It's being launched, but one of my Jewish sensitivity readers started reading it and said, "Oh, well, I don't believe this would happen. I don't believe that Muslims would do this." And we showed her some documented proof, and it completely changed her mind. She was just astounded, but she opened her mind to that this had actually happened. And she was 92 years old. So I feel like if somebody at 92 can change the way they think, then there's hope for everyone.
Yeah, but it's good that she thinks that now, but it just shows you that there's still a lot of work to be done. So I'm hoping this is a good ending with your book, Dee.
It is for readers aged 9+, so it's an optimistic ending.
Right, that's good.
And I wanted it to really reflect the solidarity and the interfaith friendship between these Muslims and Jewish people.
Well, yeah.
So thank you for having a cup of tea with me, and hopefully one day we'll be able to do it in person.
And thank you for, it's been good to have this conversation together, and I wish you all the very best with your book launch, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book.
Fleeing from the Nazis would have been terrifying for Reuben and his family, and I used my own family history to draw on that experience when writing this part of the story. My father and his family were forced to flee Austria after Kristallnacht. My father's parents were married in a synagogue, but they weren't practicing Jews, and in fact my grandfather was arrested and taken to Dachau and spent some time there. The reason for this was he was called a preventative prisoner, and that was basically because he was Jewish. He had his business taken from him and his house, and they put him in Dachau because they considered that being Jewish, even if he hadn't committed a crime, he was probably about to. So that was their reasoning for keeping him in Dachau. I have some letters that my grandfather wrote to his family while he was there, and there's a lot of underlying meaning to them where they talk about how they plan their escape from Austria. But unless you actually know the facts of the story, you don't realise from his letter that that's actually what he's talking about. So I just thought I'd read one of the letters my grandfather wrote from Dachau. And there were so many rules around letters, and they were censored, and so they had to pretend that they were happy there, that they were being well looked after, and they had to send those kind of letters to their families, and if they didn't write those things, then the letters would be confiscated. So they had to be really careful what they said, and there were strict rules about how many letters could be sent. I think they were allowed 2 letters a month, and they weren't allowed to, families were not allowed to send supplies to their loved ones, but they were allowed to send money, because the people at Dachau claimed that the prisoners could buy anything they wanted there. So this is the letter, one of the letters that my grandfather wrote to his family whilst in Dachau.
It was actually written in German, but my father translated it for me. My dear ones, your letter has made me very happy. Reading matter for the whole week. Write to Hutert Limited London, Regent Street, and Mrs. Holzer to remind her that she should not forget something which is particularly important right now. And I think that actually refers to some documents that they needed for their escape. It goes on to say some document has to be provided on the 10th of November, 20,000 shillings at the bank. And here the censor has actually interfered with the letter, so some of it's been crossed out. We're not really sure what my grandfather was trying to say next. He goes on to say, if Peter, that's my father, travels to England, fit him out well and provide him with a ticket for Australia. I'm quite entirely healthy and I hope that the permit has arrived. Now, all of my grandfather's letters talked about how healthy and well he was, and I'm not sure that was necessarily the case, but he would have been coerced in some way probably into writing that. He goes on to say, my friend has not let me down. I am happy no end that you are with Pauline, that was my grandmother's cousin. Hope to see you soon. Are Fritz and Hans still in Vienna? Now that actually could mean have they escaped safely, but of course he's not going to say these words in a letter from a concentration camp. He finishes with, embrace and kiss you, Dad. So there were a number of letters like this that he wrote from Dachau, and I've spoken to my father often about the fear of those times and how terrifying it was to try and escape from Austria and worry about being stopped by Nazi soldiers and being taken to a concentration camp or killed on the spot. So my son Nick is a wonderful actor and he has offered to do a reading of Beyond Belief for us today.
They ran until they reached Le Grand Mosque de Paris, a gleaming white building that stretched along Rue Lynn and around the corner towards Jardin des Plantes. It had a tower so tall it seemed to touch the clouds. The Paris sky behind it was bluer than Reuben remembered. He squinted, his eyes unaccustomed to the daylight. He huddled with Mama, in front of the grand entrance, sticky with sweat that made his shirt cling. Mama flexed her shoulders and straightened her back. Sweat trickled down her face too and made dark patches on her dress. Reuben saw them when she lifted her right arm, clenched her fist and rapped on the carved wooden door. Her knock sounded small. She knocked again, louder this time. She seemed determined and calm, but her fingers in Reuben's were slippery. Nobody came. The huge walls rose above them, as white as sun-bleached bones. It was bright, too bright. In the cellar, Reuben had learned to find comfort in the darkness, in not seeing and not being seen. As Reuben and Mama clung to each other, a bus sped past, a roaring green monster, its belly bulging with people. For now, the monster's appetite seemed appeased. The driver, intent on his destination, didn't appear to notice or care about the mother and son cringing in the shadows of the mosque. Another bus drove by, and another, then a truck and 3 cars heading toward the Eiffel Tower. Mama knocked again, harder this time. Reuben willed the mosque door to open. He wasn't sure anymore that the distant sound of dogs was real. Nothing seemed real. Everything had happened so fast. "Why can't I go with you and Papa to look for Rosa?" he asked. Mama bit her lip. In her last letter, Rosa said it must be done this way. The people of the mosque will keep you safe until you can be sent for. Mama turned her head. Rosa had been to university, but it didn't make her an expert on everything. What if she were wrong? Reuben grabbed Mama's hand. He wished Papa were here. He would have done one of his big shrugs, laid his hand on Reuben's shoulder calmly, and said in his slow, deep voice, "Fear is something you must not give in to. It is only as big as you allow it to grow." But Papa had gone to find Pierre, and Reuben's knees would not stop shaking. He willed the mosque door to open. His heart thumped almost as loud as the traffic that bumped and lurched on the cobbles of the Place du Puy de l'Ermite. Suddenly, Reuben's skin prickled and panic flooded through him. Fear curled icy fingers around his heart. Mama's hand squeezed even tighter. She had heard it too. The squeal of brakes, The cutting of an engine. One of the buses had stopped.
Beyond Belief. It is a wild ride of love and triumph and power, and it's based on a true story. My name is Erin Redden, and I am a friend of Dee's, but I am more than a friend. I'm a great admirer of Dee. Because of all that she does in the world, her heart is very big, but in particular, because of the kind of work that she can bring into this world and make it available, particularly to children. This book is full of the kind of richness of Dee's writing, full of that quirky, funny, the narrative drive, it's full of heart and intelligence. And when I think back to what I needed as a child, and I think we all need this, no matter what the times, we need those books that create the crumbs that can take us out of the forest, that can help us take us out of that forest of powerlessness of being a child so that we can become who we're meant to be. And really good books are the ones that do that. They write themselves across your skin and they sink in deeper and deeper so they become part of your identity. Well, Beyond Belief is that kind of book. And I'm so excited for the kids that this book is going to end up in the hands of. It was going to be important at any time, but I think even more now, it's the kind of book that kids need because it will be a light in the darkness for them and it will be crumbs that lead them out of the forest. I'm really glad to be here to be part of this and to speak for this really beautiful piece of work that's going to make such a difference.
Hello, book lovers. I'm delighted to be here today to tell you about a very special book written by one of the most talented, generous, beautiful people I know, Dee White. The book is called Beyond Belief, and truly what this woman did to create this book is beyond belief, because from travelling to Paris and crawling through the underground network of sewers to interviewing the most incredible people, Dee has constructed this book about this 11-year-old boy called Reuben who, he's hiding from the Nazis and he's basically looked after by these incredible Muslim people who saved the lives of many Jewish children in the Second World War. I have goosebumps right now even talking about it. And I've watched Dee progress through this entire creation of this book, and what she has done is truly remarkable. I cannot wait for the book to come out and for it to do well, because I know it will. And here's my prediction: film deal. I really believe this. It's just going to it's going to fly. I'm so proud of you, my friend. I cannot wait to see this book in print, hold it in my hands and read it. And because she's forcing me to, I also have to mention Evian Pog. This is my latest series. My first junior fiction series, and that's my latest 2 books out. But anyway, it's not about me, it's about Dee. Congratulations, my friend. You know I love your work, and I wish you every success with this incredible, incredible book. Lots of love.
Thanks, Erina and Tanya, for your lovely words. Erina is in my writers group, and she has been working on a book for a number of years, and it's coming out this June. It's a really amazing story, and it's called The Serpent Skin, so watch out for that in bookstores in June. I've known Tanya for many years in the children's literature world, and she has been a constant source of love and support for me. Tanya has 3 new beautiful books out. They're for early readers, and they're called Evian Pog, and they have gorgeous illustrations. You can buy these and any of Tanya's other beautiful books at your local bookstore or online. My dear friend Serena Geddes, who's an author illustrator, was going to be launching my book at the local library, but unfortunately that is no longer possible. So she has prepared a special presentation for us today, and it's a bit of fun, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'm here to join a very dear friend of mine, Dee White, in helping her celebrate the virtual launch of her amazing book, Beyond Belief. My name's Serena Geddes. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. I've known Dee, we've been friends through social media, but in 2016 we actually became very good friends. So I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about how I met Dee and how we became really amazing friends. I attended the SCBWI conference in 2016, and there's a segment where you get to pitch your story to 4 publishers, and it's the most frightening thing ever, but Dee's pitched before and she's very good at pitching her stories and her ideas. And I walked in just at the end of her pitch of Beyond Belief. I'm disappointed I missed most of it. The crowd just cheered, the publishers were completely engaged, and it was a really amazing moment to see 4 of Australia's top publishers all sitting up there just wanting a piece of this story. And Dee always remained very calm. I ended up meeting her actually by chance. The next morning, I was going in to see a fellow illustrator called Nikki Johnston, who's a gorgeous illustrator, and Dee was sitting there and they were just having this discussion, and Dee was overwhelmed, as you would be, where 4 of the Australia's biggest publishers were absolutely dead, so keen to get this story. And I had just been picked up by a US agent about 2 years earlier, and I'd said, why don't you get in touch with my agent, Jill Corcoran? And she did. They conversed, and she ended up being represented by Jill Corcoran. This was an amazing moment because I was heading to New York the following February in 2017 to attend the SCBWI New York conference. I'd spoken to a fellow illustrator, Liz Anelli. I was trying to convince her to come with me because she was also represented by Jill. And Dee came along as well. So at the last minute, 3 people who didn't really know each other. I didn't even know who Liz was. No offense, Liz. I know who you are now. Anyway, it was a really amazing time for the 3 of us to be in New York, meeting our agent, but also being there for the SCBWI New York conference. And it was a fantastic experience because Dee obviously was telling us a lot about her stories. And she has a lot of stories, to the point where Liz and I would always be, which story are you talking about? Because there's a few. And it was a really nice time for us all to spend that time together. It wasn't long after that Dee then applied for a grant through the VixArt grant, and she ended up heading over to Paris to do research for Beyond Belief. I'd love to know more about that process. I've got some special guests that are going to come on to this little segment, and we will, if you don't mind just waiting a moment, I'll just see if I can get those callers for you. Our first caller is Liz Anelli, the amazing author-illustrator. She's an exceptional artist and a good friend of Dee's as well. So I'm going to see if we can do this.
Hello, Serena.
Hello. Hi, Liz. How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
That's good. I just thought you may want to be part of the celebration for Beyond Belief.
I'd love to be.
By our amazing friend Dee White.
I know, isn't she absolutely fabulous? She's a clever thing, that girl.
She is rather. Now, I thought it might be nice to speak to you. I'm just going to put a little picture up. This is what Liz Anelli... I drew a picture of you, Liz. You're going to laugh.
Did you? Oh, such a cool drawer.
So, you also have been on this journey with Dee. Is there anything you want to share or any questions that you have for her?
I'd love to ask Dee some questions. I remember going back, I don't know what year it was that we went to New York. To
2017.
2017, and I don't think I had met Dee before you kind of twisted my arm and got me to go to the New York conference and said, this lovely lady, Dee White's going, you'll like her. And you were totally right. We shared an Airbnb together. And I remember from the very first time I met her, she was just a stream of consciousness of ideas and stories and what was going on in her head. and all the different books that she was writing. So it was great to spend a few days with her and get to kind of see inside how an author's mind works when she's writing a story.
That's actually a good point, because as illustrators first, like we're both strong illustrators, we work very differently to Dee, so it was a very good time for us to really learn about the process of how she writes her stories and where her ideas came from.
Totally, you're completely right. I remember one day Dee and I went for a long walk down the High Line, the elevated old railway that's been made into a beautiful walkway. And we walked right down to the bottom of Manhattan because she was going down there to research in the Jewish Museum there. And all the way down for hours, she was just telling me various different plots and about the characters and what drives the story. So I found that absolutely fascinating. But it did, at the time, it kind of occurred to me, like, where do all these ideas come from? And what were her personal connections? So I'd love to ask Dee, like, for Beyond Belief, what was the connection that really struck into your heart, that really made you want to write this story?
Well, I will get her to answer that later.
Oh, that would be great. Please ask her that question.
So, and is there anything else, Liz, that you'd like to share before we say farewell and get on to the second caller?
Oh, I'd just like to say how much I love illustrating my books. And it's a complete joy making pictures and how we lose ourselves in it. And I've got a couple of picture books coming out this year. Dry to Dry, written by Pamela Freeman, another Nature Story series book.
Yeah.
And that's coming out in August. And The Biscuit Maker, which is a lovely picture book story written by Sue Lawson, also with Walker Books, which will be coming out the following month in September.
Oh, fantastic.
And I'm busy working on lots more.
And what was the book that you were working on when we were away? You just finished?
Oh, yes. Now, I remember that was just as I was completing Ten Ton Pond, the migration story written by Carol Wilkinson. And I actually had to really rush to get the artwork finished so it could go to New York, and it ended up being the best artwork I've made forever, which I don't know what that says about my illustration process.
You just let go and just had fun with it, or just had to get it
finished.
Absolutely.
Sometimes when you just fly into it, you do your best work.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. So, well, thank you so much for that. And I'm sure that Dee will do a little video just to let us know some answers to your questions. And I will say goodbye and get on to our next caller.
I totally can't wait to hear her answers. Thank you very much, Serena. You're wonderful.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, this is Adam Wallace.
Oh, hello. I'm calling you on behalf of a little interview I'm doing for Dee White to celebrate the virtual launch of Beyond Belief.
Oh my gosh, you called me!
You weren't our first choice, but no one else called back. So how are you doing then, Adam Wallace?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Serena Geddes. How are you?
I'm very good. And I forgot to introduce who you were. So apparently you're one of the New York Times best sellers at the moment. You've been on there for the last 4 weeks, is that correct?
That is a rumour that is actually true. One of the few rumours about me that's true. But yes, I've been lucky enough to have 2 books on there for the last 4 weeks, which has been awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. Anyway, caller, I'm calling you because you had a question.
I actually have 2 questions. Can I ask 2 questions? Is that okay to ask 2?
Yes, of course.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I was wondering, my first question for Dee was I was wondering what is her personal connection to the story of Beyond Belief?
That's a good question. I'll have to wait and we'll have to get Dee to answer that later. And your second question?
Well, look, I love Dee. I'm a big fan of Dee White. So I'm just wondering what's next for Dee after this?
Oh, fantastic. Well, again, we'll ask her those questions. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you called. Like I've been waiting by the phone and I've been really, really excited. And,
okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't
Thank
imagine
you.
why.
All right. Thank you. Bye. See. Okay. Some questions for you, Dee, to think about and it's been a lot of fun to be a part of your day to celebrate your launch of Beyond Belief. Ready? I don't have poppers, but congratulations! Amazing. I just wanted to say I'm so proud of you. One of the things for me on this journey with you was seeing just how much you actually had to deal with a lot of challenges as alongside Ruben, who is your protagonist in this story, and he had a lot of challenges along the way, and you've certainly had some challenges and a lot of obstacles, but you know, as a beautifully strong writer that you are, it never deterred you from getting your story out there, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that are really going to connect with this story because you write from your heart. And I know you've been very supported by your family and by your friends because you care about a lot of people and you always try to put people first and get other author illustrators moving forward. One of the things that you have asked is to talk a little bit about my own book, and I asked Liz and Adam too, but I hung up on Adam because he just talked a lot. But I'll get him to put some of his books up as well. When I met you and when we went to New York, I had just secured my first author illustrated picture book with Simon & Schuster in New York, in the US. And you were there. You were fantastic. And as Liz said, you really did help both of us so much with just offering some advice from a writer's perspective. And it's amazing and I'm really grateful. Today's a big day and you've waited a long time for this for Beyond Belief to come out, and I really hope it gets the traction it deserves because it's a fantastic book and it really resonates and it's going to open questions for a lot of people, and it should. So this is a sequel to Rosie and Rasmus. That's Where the Dragons Live, as it follows Rasmus on his journey to the island where the dragons live. And I wanted to end on this because the crux of this story is be yourself, so the right people is absolutely, I think that sums up our friendship. I just want to say congratulations and so glad that we can all celebrate your amazing launch of Beyond Belief, even if it's by video, but we're all still together. And I just want to say congratulations, Dee White, well done. Yay!
Oh, thanks Serena and Liz and Adam. That was so lovely. Great questions too. I think I might have answered the family connections one already in my previous discussions. In answer to your question, Adam, about what's next for me, I have a book called Eddie Popcorn's Guide to Parent Training coming out with Scholastic on the 1st of May, and it's a completely different book from Beyond Belief. It's very funny. The illustrations by Ben Johnson are just hilarious. There are heaps of pics and the text is very visual, so it's a great book for kids who like graphic novels and funny books, and for reluctant readers as well. I'm currently working on another historical fiction and also Eddie 2, which is Eddie Popcorn's Guide to Teacher Taming, and that will be out with Scholastic next year. Adam, I think you had another question for me which I didn't get to include, and that was about, you asked where the inspiration for Ruben came from. Well, he's kind of a combination of my eldest brother, who is actually the boy in the photo in my book trailer, and he was very serious as a child and also very responsible. And it's also my eldest son is like that, and my eldest son has always been a big cat lover. And there's elements of my younger son in there as well. So it's kind of a combination of those three people who are very dear to me. And interestingly, my brother Guy, whose photo I've used for the book trailer, and he was about 11 then, he has a French name, Guy or Guy, so that was kind of appropriate to the story as well. We've come to the end of the launch now, and there's an opportunity for you to win a free copy of Beyond Belief if you are a resident in Australia, and all you have to do is slip a comment below and let me know why you'd like to win a copy of the book. I'd love to hear from you, so even if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the comments below as well. I was hoping to go live, but unfortunately my NBN is just not reliable enough. So I'm here and I will be responding to all your comments, but it will have to be in writing. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you've enjoyed the launch as much as I have. Thank you to my wonderful publisher Claire and my editor Christy Bushnell, and also to all the wonderful authors who helped me out today. Kathryn Gauci, Erin Redden, Tanya McCartney, Serena Geddes, Liz Anelli and Adam Wallace. I hope you go out and buy their books. I'd also like to thank Caitlin Secker from Caitlin Secker Music for her lovely message and helping me to get the word out about this launch. Caitlin's an amazing singer-songwriter if you need some music for your book trailer or anything like that. The best thing you can do for an author or a musician during these times is to buy their music or buy their books. And if you like them, spread the word. You can do this by doing reviews or just by telling people. I'd also like to thank my son Nick, who did the wonderful reading for me, and of course my husband Michael and my other son Sam, who are always a constant source of support. And I just wanted to finish by saying the arts are even more important than ever in a time like this. So let's support the arts, let's support all the actors, writers, filmmakers, sculptors, comedians, painters, musicians, and encourage them to keep creating.